So who's right? How's the economy doing? Are we actually getting better, or are things just getting worse? We put that question to our economic analyst, Bill Rodgers, who is the professor and chief economist at Rutgers University. Thanks for coming back and joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
We've had a jobs report that was iffy. We've had conflicting ideas from both conventions on how the economy is doing, but you sit in the center of this. What are you seeing?
Well, depending upon your point of reference, if you go, let's say, 4 years ago, which some people are asking, many Americans, we clearly are better off than we were 4 years ago. The economy is better. And also, if you go even a year ago, 12 months ago, the economy is better off. Now, the key is, I use the word economy. Right, that the overall economy is growing, national income is growing. However, right, the labor market is still this lagging indicator that it's what I've called a bifurcated recovery. That because we've only added 103,000 private sector jobs, which is well below this threshold that I've talked with you about, that you have to be above 150,000 new jobs per month, right, to draw down the unemployment rate.
Right.
You know, it's this kind of drip, very anemic, very tepid growth. And so if you're the most educated, most skilled, you got strong networks, you've probably done okay in this recovery. But if you're on the other side of those attributes, it's still very challenging.
Right. So it's a very competitive environment.
Right. I mean, there's a number that the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out called employment sort of job openings, and basically it wasn't in Friday's report, but it comes out in another week, and basically there's about 4 people estimated for looking for a job for every one job, so a 4-to-1 ratio. So it's very, very competitive. You're right.
So politically, we look at it one way, but economically, what are the core things that you look at to say, well, we can tell this is getting better? We notice that advertising revenues are up. We notice the stock market's doing better. What kind of, when you look at those things and you say, well, the economy's got to be doing better, there's a lot of spending going on.
Well, the spending has recovered, and yes, spending is about 7% of national income. That is personal spending, and it has recovered. However, not as to the level it was prior to the recession. And part of that reason is because one of the major indicators that you didn't mention was, which is very important, is housing. Right, that we had a massive housing bust, construction bust. Millions of families became what we call underwater in their home payments. So the value of their house was less than their mortgage payment, and you also saw the home ownership rate drop dramatically in certain communities, and so people lost or had a decline in their value of their biggest asset that they will typically hold, and so that made them feel much less wealthier, which then drove consumption down. So yes, we've seen a return, but still the housing market is still on the mend. Construction has added some jobs over the last few months, but still not at the level that the president especially wants them to be at. The other piece too is we have, instead of just focusing on the unemployment rate, which is 8.1%, if you focus on what we call the real unemployment rate, that includes people who've stopped actively searching but want a job, or includes those who are working part-time but want to work full-time. You still have an unemployment rate that's almost 15%.
Wow, that's pretty significant. There's something we don't hear a lot about. I saw something in the Motley Fool about banks who are making billions now. They're back to profit levels, but they have not been loaning out the money that they were supposed to loan to the small businesses and the homeowners to get the rest of the economy back on the right foot, and the banks are sitting there. We haven't heard a lot about that.
Yeah, well, I think that that's true, but there have been efforts to try to stimulate and try to get banks to sort of open up the purse strings, but there's a great deal of uncertainty. Right? You have uncertainty in Europe. Seems to have subsided. The European Central Bank has said that they're going to do their own kind of sort of stimulating their economy. People are waiting on Wednesday. Our Federal Reserve Bank is going to be meeting, and people are wanting to see if they're going to also go to another round of what we call QE3, this quantitative easing of the third style, to try to stimulate the economy, to get people to sense that there is less uncertainty out there. But the big uncertainty that's hanging over us, right, is this presidential election.
Right.
And so that's why many banks are still holding, or either they're asking much more questions about their potential lenders.
Well, the only thing that's certain is that the banks are making money.
Well,
there's certainty there.
Well, yes, but the broader sort of financial sector and the broader sort of business sector, that's one of their big concerns, that they don't what their criticism of President Obama and of the administration and of this sort of ninth episode of divided government is that it's just creating too much uncertainty, and we've been kicking the can down the street on a variety of issues that are staring us in the face in terms of.
What do you see as the biggest downside to this? Now, with all of these people out of work, I mean, at some point, folks have to eat.
Right. I think one of the immediate downside of having 12 million Americans unemployed, 40% who have been out of work for 27 weeks or longer, that's long-term unemployed. The biggest downside is the lack of stimulus or consumption that these people are able to make in their communities. There's a longer-term effect, is that many of these people lost their jobs because of the cyclical nature of just the economy ebbing and flowing. But when you're out of work for 27 weeks or more, your skills start to atrophy, your networks start to dry up, and so what my biggest fear over the next few years is, if we don't get this economy back on a firmer footing, those Americans who were cyclically unemployed are going to become structurally unemployed, and we're going to have to spend even much more money to reintegrate them back into the labor force.
Right.
And there's this wonderful 1980s Fram oil filter commercial. If you remember the tagline in there, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. And that's what's facing Americans.
Wow, that's an interesting scenario. We'll see what happens. But always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
We'll look to have you again
And
soon.
I hope to be more positive with our last report before the jobs report.
We're all looking forward to that.
This whole dismal science thing is really getting me.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Right, yeah, thank you.